Okay, hi. We welcome you to another episode of Learning Stories. This is a show where we interview a unique set of learners from the 21st century. In each episode of this show, we profile a guest who has a story to share about how they acquired a set of diverse skills and knowledge in a creative and innovative manner. In the process, we hope to uncover a new definition of learning as conceptualized, narrated, and imagined by the guest on our show. Today's guest, Aamoye Chaudhury, is a close friend, and I've seen him um, become a better artist over time. But he is an artist based out of Mumbai. He completed a 4-year degree, which was a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Applied Art from the Viva College of Art and Design, and now expresses himself as an artist in the form of sketches, artworks, photos, and poems. I will be linking his Instagram handle in the show notes. But to get started, Amoy, as an artist, and I've seen your work. I actually thought an interesting way to start the show would be to show
Mhm.
our viewers some of your artwork. So I'm just gonna quickly do that and then jump
Yeah,
into
sure,
our first question.
sure.
So these are again from Amoy's Instagram page. This was a mural he did at a cafe in Bombay. This was from his sketchbook, and he's got a really nice journal where he keeps drawing and sketching things. This was another portrait, and what's interesting about his work is he also combines his artworks with writing and poetry and an observation. So it's really nice to see how he thinks about the things he's drawing too. Um, Here's another artwork. And he's also playing around with colors and mediums. It's not just sketches, but also, I suppose, oil colors and so many other things. So awesome, Amma. So that's like the
Yeah,
background about your work. But just to get
yeah.
started, Amma, like
Hmm.
I remember I met you, like I think it's about 6 7 years or so now.
Yeah.
But as an artist, right, Amoy, there
Hmm.
are a lot of things that go into being an artist. Like you have
Definitely.
you have to master, learning how to draw lines, shapes, how to
Hmm.
combine colors, how to think
Yes.
about tonality. So,
Hmm.
like, when did you first start drawing, or when did you first develop this interest for drawing? Or, to think about this in a more interesting way, Amoy, what was Amoy like as a student or child in school?
Oh, okay. So, I love talking about myself in third person. So, Amoy, Amoy, as a child, was like, the whole childhood, whole time is like, you want somebody to be a mentor, and you try to look for ways to, like, get into art if you feel like you are drawn towards it. But for me, I think it was a kind of a different journey in realizing how I really love art, and in what kind of manner would I want to express myself.
Mm,
Because at the end of the day, I feel that artists are just people who love to express themselves. Like, in whatever medium possible. That's the reason when you said that I work in poetries, or I love clicking photos. But I feel all of those things are just but mediums through which we are expressing, but then the origination with the expression, which is here inside, which is the thought process, which all of artists have their own unique style of doing.
mm,
Finding that unique style is the must thing, to be honest. And it always begins, at least at some point of time, as copying, I feel.
mm,
So for me, as a child, I used to always just imagine that every day I go back home. And as soon as I reached back home, like, I did not have much friends. I was not this talkative of a person that I am now. I used to be this silent person who rather likes to keep to himself. So
mm,
I used to go back home and just wait for the time where I go up and look at this Japanese animes like Pokemon, Dragon Ball Z, Beyblade. Back then these are the famous ones which were going on, and a lot many more, because I used to love that. Animax channel, which people generally used to just skip through because people used to be like, "Oh my God, Japanese, who's gonna listen to that?" But for some reason, you know, you don't have a hold really over things what attract you,
Mm,
but that was something which really attracted me. And like as a child, I was a fanboy. So all these Tazos and card games and trading card stuff, I used to collect all of those basically. I used to come back home and then I should love those artworks basically. The reason was this, that the storyline is definitely amazing. That
mm,
all the anime storylines are extremely good, and I think they have a lot of value in it as well, which also formed as a basis of my values, to be very honest.
mm,
Because like standing up for a friend and the stuff that they show in the story is obviously very um, touching, as
mm,
in the values which they narrate. But alongside that, the art that goes with that storytelling, which really, I feel, accentuates the whole learning or grasping power of people so much so that people exactly remember the scenes where, okay, this was the scene and this is where this happened.
mm.
I think it was underlying in the artwork which is there, which is very expressive in its nature, which
Ah,
is why I was very attracted towards manga. They call it manga basically. So, like in US and the Western world, it's mainly known as comic books. All
got it.
of us we have read comic books, right? But then the Japanese people, they just termed that thing manga, which is a very cultural thing for them, where for them it is a basis of inculcating values, like how
Oh,
we have our personal books here. There are mangas for each age. The readership is just infinite
okay.
because
So is it like a comic book, is a way of creating and creating and distributing comics that's uniquely uh, like particular to the Japanese culture?
particular, yes, exactly right on point.
Okay.
That, and plus the fact that they take into consideration that, for example, a shonen manga is something which you like, read from the readership of the shonen manga is from 10 to 14, like approximately the teenagers,
Mm,
because shonen means a boy. So those comic books are particularly aimed towards boys,
mm.
and so on and so forth. It's like all the different readerships have different kind of mangas particularly made to that understanding.
Nice.
But then all of it boils down to the art, I feel.
Got it.
So I mean, all of this was a latter understanding in my life, to be very honest. At that time, it was just infatuation, I would say,
Mm,
that I used to love drawing those things. And to be very honest, the only thing which you look forward to as a kid, I would say, is that you like to stand apart. Like,
mm,
when we are in a class of 10 people or 20 people, and then the teacher comes to you, the teacher tells you that, oh, wow, you really did well, and gives you a star. That feeling of pride in yourself is something else. And
yeah.
I was never so good in studies, to be very
Mm,
honest. So the thing that really got me recognition, I would say, was those very small little sketches I used to make in my book, copying from those trading card games, and I used to show it around to my friends, and my friends used to be like, "Oh wow, that is really cool."
nice.
And I think for at least 5 6 years, that was the only motivation that I actually ever needed to be
Uh,
able to like get into it really.
yeah.
And eventually, when I really got serious about it, which was around like in 10th standard, I would say, ninth and 10th standard, because everybody knows that there is this elementary and intermediate grade examinations for art which happen in India.
Mm,
And I was like, why not? If that is what, you get all different kinds of perks and everything. You get an art college degree also. I mean, even when you go for a fine art degree,
okay.
they check what score had you got in your elementary and intermediate examinations, basically.
Oh,
So you
it's
got a grade,
especially in the subject of art, right? Okay.
especially in the subject of art. The only thing that measures is the drawing skill, basically.
Mm,
And it's a graded examination. So A, B, C, D, whatever your grade is, based on that, you get that much leeway when you give the entrance exam for an arts college. It's
okay.
basically that way. Now, elementary examination, I was already too late because I figured out about this art examination or something like this happening is when I was in 10th standard. Before that, I never even knew that something like this exists.
Wow.
But when I realized that something like intermediate art grade examination exists, I went and I signed up for it, and I joined a drawing class for particular, I guess, for 2 3 months. Some random teacher, and the teacher used to teach me painting, like
Mm.
like doing those watercolors and everything. And I was never really interested in painting, to be very honest.
Mm.
Colors were a nightmare for me. I mean, I remember back when I had met you, Abhishek. I should always make all of these black and white sketches, or like the
Yeah.
ball pen sketches. That was
Yeah.
more of my stuff back then, because
Mm.
I used to love the ink medium particularly, which is still a love today, no doubt.
Okay.
But the only point just being that I realized that there were a lot of bindings which we have internally.
Yeah.
So it is more of a process of unlearning, I would say, in a manner.
Mm.
Unlearning the social cues which we have probably picked up from
Sure.
around us.
Yeah. And
And then you create space for things to just fall into place, I feel. Because then you keep learning, but then the whole time you are actually unlearning to break your boundaries, basically, so
got
that
it.
when you have a particular thought, for example,
Mm.
that okay, this is the set thing I want to do. Like, for example, I want to I only draw with inks, suppose, for
Mm.
an example. And if I say to myself that this is the only thing I'm good at,
Mm.
and probably if I try something new, I might really not be that good, at least up to my expectations, because technically it's not anybody else's expectations, but it's our own expectations of ourselves, which really
Mm.
does not push us forward to come out of that zone, that comfort zone where we want to feel that we're good.
Sure.
Because by that time, I mean, the whole thing with the kid, I mean, when you're a child, is this that time I was looking for people's approval around me,
Mm.
and then I had to unlearn that and realize that I am showing them what I want them to see, because
Yeah.
that's what they gauge and they understand that expression. And what eventually became my important point, I would say, was the factor that when somebody looks at my artwork,
Mm.
or when somebody looks at my illustration or a photo or reads my poetry,
Mm.
they should be able to feel it.
Mm.
That the feeling aspect of it, rather than only an acknowledgement before,
Mm.
was, I feel, the gap between realizing that okay, I need to find my own style, and that whole transformation from the time when I used to just do manga and just used to try to stick to one thing. I mean, back then I used to. Now my Instagram account is Revolution Amoy,
Mm.
but back then it was Revolution Manga, because I used to feel that manga is the thing I'm good at, and I had stuck myself my identity to that for the original couple of years, even when I passed uh, out of like when I passed my 12th standard and all of the things were going on. Even then, I used to when I met you, basically around all those times, I used to do a lot more ink illustrations only, and I had uh, I guess stuck myself to a particular identity,
Yeah.
and then eventually my learning was how to break from your own identity, which you create for
Yeah.
yourself,
Yeah.
your own figure of how you imagine yourself to be.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I mean, there are so many, like important things you said there, Amoy. Like for instance, I really like the point you said about copying, um, and figuring out how you can learn by copying a
yes.
particular form that is
Hmm.
ideal. Or so you chose manga, and you basically made several copies of the illustrations you were seeing in that form.
Hmm.
And I also like what you said about, you know you focusing on a specific form of art that was unique to you, right?
Yes.
You felt like ink illustrations were your strength, and you worked really hard to develop your skills in that particular
Yes.
area, rather than
Hmm.
trying to be um, like an artist in all sort of realms, right? But
Exactly.
even that little thing you said about moving from acknowledgement to
Hmm.
feeling, I feel like it was a very important point in your evolution as an artist, right?
It
Because
was.
when
It
we
was.
when we start off, we often
Mm.
create for other people, but then I think it's really nice that at such a young age you were able to move to the point where you realize that you can create something with your own thoughts, and that can actually, in some way affect how a person is feeling. And I think those were some very, very, very powerful like points you mentioned there, Amoy. But Amoy, one thing I always noticed you do,
Mm.
you always carried a notebook with you wherever you
Yes.
used to go, and whenever you
Yes.
had some time, you'd sit down and you'd start drawing, or you'd and
Mm.
and a lot of your drawings are very observational, because I remember you'd meet a person, you'd look at their face, and you'd start drawing a little sketch about what they look like, and it was often very
Mhm.
accurate. So if
Yes.
you if you have that if you have a copy of your notebook, would you mind showing us some of your recent drawings on that, and maybe just talking about a couple? And
Mhm. Yes, yes, definitely. I would.
because I know, like, one thing I know is that in that
Mhm.
period from 7th to 6th grade to university, I'm sure
Mhm.
you spent several hours, hundreds and hundreds of hours just drawing in this notebook, in these several notebooks.
Yes,
So
to
I'd
that.
I'd I'd love to see how you develop this competence in shape, line, and all of these other things through
Mhm.
this journaling technique.
Well, to be very honest, like, I mean, even at an art college, my art sir, my art professor, for the drawing, basically. So we have a lot of subjects in our art school, but drawing particularly is a subject where you learn how to just draw, observing the environment around you.
Okay.
And for me, even when before, like, I guess 3 4 year before my art sir ever told that stuff to me, for me 11 12 channel, like, I used to love journaling.
Mm,
Actually, it was because of a habit of mine of to write diaries. In fact, first I used to, I just
mm,
write what I feel, and then eventually I came along the lines where I realized that, to be better at something, you need to practice. I mean, touchdown, that's the only way. I mean, especially for the technical aspect of it, because the point being that, mm, the technical aspect of art, which is, as you said, the form, shape, line, color, lighting, the particular waves, the depth in your lines, all of those things, those only and only can come with time.
mm,
Because the more number of hours you give at something, I feel, the more better you become at discerning what is really good and what is not.
mm,
And that discerning eye only develops when you are actually observing things around you. That's where I feel observational drawing comes a lot into play.
mm,
And for me, when I used to watch a lot of art TED talks and a lot of things. I mean, these days we had everything available for us. I mean, we're the internet generation basically. So I used to go on the net and I used to find people whom I am inspired by.
mm,
I think that was again a very important part of a formation, because when you really want to build, right? Like, for example, I can find a time in my life, during 11 12 standard, where I was doing art, but it wasn't exactly specifically reaching somewhere.
mm,
And I was not really in a zone where I was happy with myself as to
mm,
the kind of results I was producing in the artworks that I used to have.
mm,
And for me, I realized that at the end of the day, if figure drawing is what you want to practice, if you love making human beings and sketches, and storytelling and comic book is the way you want to express, then your figures are the main expressive aspect.
okay.
And for that to be learned, you need to observe the people around you. So, as you said, I used to carry that small book with me everywhere I used to go.
Right.
Even when we went for an outing or something, like, I remember that I used to come to your house and I used to always bring that book. And even when I was in the bus or a train, or I think any public transport. I love public transports basically because of this very reason, that I can just see strangers, people who look very, very different, unique, and I love unique characters because they're so much more fun to draw,
Yeah.
that they are exactly. I mean, people might say it's funny, but
Yeah.
more than funny, it's very interesting to realize that I didn't find any two people similar in
Yeah.
all this time. So many different types of people,
Yeah,
and
yeah, and
more so.
like I remember you telling me at that time as well, Amo. You used to go to,
Mm,
I think, a McDonald's at some place, and you
yes.
would actually just sit at the McDonald's and draw for several hours. So that was something I remember. Also, this point about humans looking different, right? Like
Mm,
whenever you meet someone, if you want to describe them to somebody else, you often focus on one or two things, right? You focus on
yes.
like what was the color of their hair,
Mm,
did what was the color of their eyes, how did they smile, how did they stand. So and I was actually having this conversation with a friend recently. When you look at like a bunch of animals, like if you look at
mm,
ducks, all the ducks look same to you, but I'm sure
yes.
the ducks probably know differences amongst themselves, right? Similarly, for
Yes.
humans, for
Mm,
some reason, you are able to identify differences in different individuals and that's like a genetic sort of skill that we just seem to have, and
mm,
so I think that you're right when you say that practice is the key to whatever, and whatever you want to become competent in. but
mm,
but I think you created an environment where you could do that constantly, and while everyone was in
yes.
school, from that very early period, you were constantly trying to become better at it, which gave you an advantage. And that's what I wanted to talk about now, Amay. Like, why did
Mm,
you decide to pursue the Bachelor of Fine Arts in Applied
mm,
Art program? Because a lot of people, you know, would be very unsure about doing that right out of high school, but you
yes.
committed to a 4-year program, and what
Mm,
was the structure of that program, and how do you think it benefited you as an artist?
mm. Okay. So, well, fine arts is a pretty intensive stream, to be very honest.
So, like,
It requires,
when you say fine arts, somewhere, what all would come under fine arts?
well, okay. So, applied arts and fine arts is a bit different.
Okay.
The course I did was applied arts, but then it's known as Bachelor of Fine Arts because it all comes under one category, basically.
Okay.
At the same time, fine arts refers to the painting aspect of it more,
Mm,
as to painting, and it has a lot of vocational stuff as well. You get a bachelor in fine arts in music. You get a bachelor in fine arts in different things, basically in pottery, in clay making, in photography, in so all of these skills, basically the skill set that we acquire, be it photography or anything. Like for example, right now, uh, I am actually a photography major from art college. I
mm,
did my major in photography. So
okay.
that's how that was my phase where I learned how to express through photos, basically, uh, which I eventually wanted to because when I joined art college, the only important thing was for me was that I just want to learn,
Mm,
that I want to exceptionally be able to get the resources, I would say, the
mm,
best of resources in order to be able to do that.
mm.
Um, at the same time, I would say my realization after joining an art college was very different per se.
Okay.
Uh, I when I joined an art college and I used to go there, the practice aspect of it was amazing.
Mm,
I I I was a lazy worker, all right. For me, until an idea really trickles my mind, I do not sit up and get to the drawing aspect of it.
mm.
So for me, art college was a major learning and understanding how to not be a moody artist. Because moody artist is what everybody is technically inside, because we all express when we want to.
Mm.
But when you, as an applied artist, especially in applied arts field, I would say, you understand that you are doing this for clients, for different advertising agencies.
Mm.
You're doing it for people, basically.
Mm.
That's the reason the other name for applied arts is commercial arts,
Oh.
because artworks used for commercial purposes, which is for probably say advertising or the logo making or the branding for companies, and all of these particular fields, the kind of artworks they have,
Mm.
which is in fact for a large number of audience and for the people, is generally what comes into the category of applied arts.
Got it.
Now, in applied arts, I realized that I was somewhere stuck between the pavement where I realized that I wanted to express more of myself,
Mm.
which is much more of fine arts.
Got
Fine
it.
arts is painting and what you would particularly call the portrait artists that you see, like, and whenever we talk about Vincent van Gogh and all these famous artists, all of these people are fine artists.
Yeah.
So fine artists means people who are just wanting to express themselves, and the medium they choose to do it with can be painting or could be any other particular medium, but that's just their mode of expression. So
Nice.
they do it for themselves, which is in turn loved by people, and then they find a value in it and then they buy it.
Mm.
For example, the abstract art scenario, where abstract art painters make it for themselves. It's their particular expression which they put on the paper.
Got it.
And when a person really finds it meaningful enough and worthy enough to really connect it to it, that's when they buy it. And that's the reason it's sold in auctions. So
For a very large amount of money as well, right?
exactly.
I
That
mean,
thing
I
is like it's insane.
Yeah, because I think about it often. Like why is a painting worth $100 million? I remember seeing the Van Gogh at the
Mhm,
museum at the Museum of Modern Art in New York,
mhm.
and it's probably one of the most expensive paintings in the world. I don't know, 100 million, 200 million,
Yes.
but it's just colors combined in a particular way that the artist expressed themselves. So it's just fascinating to think about how something created by a human being can be so valuable. And what I'm hearing from you, Amo, is there is when you are a young artist, there's always a struggle between trying to create art but also trying to see how you can make a sustainable living out of it, right? And i think
Definitely.
i think you were exposed to that in that 4-year program, but also like one thing I remember you doing, Amoy, there was a Comic Con like convention
Yes.
in
Yes.
Bombay, and you decided to set up a stall where you were selling your artworks. And I actually
Yes.
purchased an artwork from you at
Yes, I
that time.
remember. I remember.
And I think that was such an amazing idea because you were,
Mm,
I think, in high school or just getting into university, but you were not afraid of being entrepreneurial and actually
yes.
just telling the world, this is what I'm doing, and you can
Yes.
buy this. And you had a beautiful stall, all your artworks were there, but you were selling yourself, and I think that was a very
Exactly.
beautiful, vulnerable thing to do because it's not easy to create something that will be valuable, but also to, figure out how you can make a living out of it. So
Yes,
like
it is.
what how like if like because a lot of young people that are interested in art as a
Mm,
career will be listening to this, and why based
yes.
on your experience, what are some avenues that a young artist should look at in a particular medium to maybe sustain themselves financially, and
Hmm.
maybe some professional options that they can look at according to you?
All right. So, well, according to me, it's a very saturated mindset which people generally have when they think about the fact that they want to enter the arts field.
Mm.
Because if you really, I mean, especially in India where we are, um, the particular thought about artworks is runs basically like that okay, I mean, you want to become an artist means you want to do nothing for the rest of your life and earn money. That's
Yeah, which is very unfortunate, and it
that's
it also it also plays in your mind as a child, right? Because they
it
place
does.
they place careers on a hierarchy, with the sciences and the commerce always placed on a pedestal. And then,
Exactly.
so as a young person, you're like, I don't want to be part of this crowd, I want to be part of the cool crowd, which is
Yes.
pretty unfortunate because there are different ways to be successful and happy, right? But again, sorry to interrupt you.
Yes, no, no, no problem at all. You're not interrupting. I feel like more like we are on a connection where you really understand what I'm trying to say before I'm telling it to you. So it's awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're exactly right about that because, and not only from the society, I feel from every child's perspective, what question I probably had back then also was that even if I leave the society part of it out of it,
Mm,
thinking yourself that would I really, really, really be happy
mm,
if I keep doing this for the rest of my life is a major decision, I feel.
mm,
Because at the end of the day, what matters to me is the fact that no matter what kind of client exposure I have,
mm,
or probably I'm having a bad day, a rough period, a rough patch in time, be whatever it is, I can actually again sit down and get back to art.
mm.
It's like my getaway. It's it's like a magic carpet ride, basically.
And yeah, you find a lot of comfort and peace in just practicing it, right?
Exactly. For
Mm,
me, I really understood the major aspect was this factor that now when I told you that I was a lazy kid, I was being so counterintuitive to the fact that I should draw so much as a child.
yeah.
I was lazy when I realized that something did not interest me, and then I was practicing it. But when I realized the factor that I never really practiced art, for me, that was just sitting and like it was a feeling of sort of like meditation, like I used to just sit, I used to draw people. I and not once did that practice word even pop up in my mind even once. It should be that seamless flow, I feel.
Interesting.
That's the only way you can actually do, like, the I love the word riyaz for that very reason.
Mm,
Riyaz means the kind of practice where you don't realize that you're practicing and you get so lost in it that you just keep on doing it until you realize that, oh my God, so much time has passed, and you just get up and be like, okay, now I need to get with the rest of my day.
wow.
I mean, that should be the level of passion, I feel.
Nice.
And although at the same time, I would not say that you do not hit a rough patch. As a child, I again and again thought of, what would be the right path towards me even being able to achieve that. Like when the first question is answered, that
Yeah.
okay, now I know that I am happy doing art
Mm,
and it is my solace. Now, what should I do in order to be able to be happy for the rest of my life?
yeah. Like make a living, which is yeah, a
Exactly.
question that just plays on your head, right?
Which definitely does, especially when you're coming to a grad college and everybody around you is like, okay, wow, now only 4 more years until this guy is going to start working and having responsibilities. Because obviously, I mean, as a person, we all have a certain number of responsibilities, which I never realized I would have also
Mm,
as a child. But now that we have just entered adulthood, I would not say I'm a complete adult yet, but just entering that adulthood stage and realizing responsibilities, now I realize a lot of impact of whatever my decisions were in time.
mm,
Back then, as in a teenager, I would say, the best part I feel for a person, for an artist, for a person who really aspires to become an artist, is that they should expose themselves. They should expose the shit out of themselves. Like, just go out there, talk to people. Like for me, the major learning was because of King Siddharth for this very reason.
oh, so that yes,
Exposure, the essence was you guys. Basically, my all those Sunday meets with you, Abhishek, King Siddharth, Raj. I mean, not that a lot of people would know about these guys, but
yeah. I mean,
these
I can
were
just give
just,
them like a little background. So Amoy is
yes,
actually
definitely.
so a couple of us, me, Amoy, and because a lot of them won't know these people,
Yes,
Kiran, Siddharth.
Siddharth,
So
Jatin.
Jatan, we used to meet up at one of our houses, and often would be my place. But we were all interested in very different things.
Mm.
Jatin was actually on the show and he's passionate about science. Siddharth was, really passionate about design and user experience, and he was working at a company at that time. Raj was into computer science, but also into so many other things. And,
Mm.
I was interested in education. But I think what was really interesting about those conversations and what I remember is that we were so open to learning about the other person's perspectives. And we were also
Exactly.
arguing, but we were having productive arguments, like how does art
Yes,
influence science? How does this influence that? And I feel like that is a very powerful way to learn, from
it
other
is.
other people, but also realizing that there are various ways to look at the world, and all these ways can coexist. Um, and
Simultaneously, like
yeah,
it's a chain basically. And yeah, sorry to cut you, but
no, no,
you're
but
obviously very right.
and like what are some of the ways, Amma, like just thinking about that, and again, you don't
Mm.
have to answer this, but how did,
Mhm.
because I know recently you've been painting
Yes,
like murals at restaurants
yes.
and cafes around
Hmm.
Bombay, and what
Hmm.
was that like for you? Maybe you can talk about one or two of those murals, and
Yes,
maybe also talk about Black Seer, which is something you've been working on in
yes.
terms
It's
of
my
a professional project. Go ahead, Amai.
yes,
It's
yes.
your
So,
stage.
um, so transitioning back from that stage where I was with you guys, and then I realized that perspectives, as you said, is extremely important aspect of an upbringing of an artist.
Mm,
So once you know that you're happy, you want to spend the rest of your life being an artist, then you do things for exposure as well. As you said, I did the Comic Con where I was, I had a stall, and that was all leap of faith for me, to be very honest. It was like I was not so much sure about what I was doing, but I still went through with it because I knew that at the end of the day, whatever it is, you having completed one project, even if it's just one single artwork, that level of satisfaction which you feel when you have created something, that is just immeasurable, I would say.
mm,
And later on, that immeasurable happiness is what led me to be able to acceptance. Like as you said, I did an art college. For me, all those years with you guys and meeting different people, I met a lot of people while traveling. I sketched a lot of people, and in turn what happened is that I ended up having a conversation with a lot of those people.
mm,
What I realized eventually in time was that all these perspective which I accepted over time just made me full. And there is no limit to really how full we can be. There is just infinite, exactly, I would say. So the
mhm.
more we meet people, the more number of experiences we're all building it up inside, and the more amount of learning we're doing technically. Because
Sure.
when you're talking to somebody and you understand the perspective, you're learning from their story. So you're kind of living a life which you haven't even led without even actually being in that person's position, which is a
Mm,
extremely I would say reliable way of living,
mm,
particularly because think about it. I mean, all those Van Gogh paintings which you saw, I mean, the Van Gogh painting which you saw, the reason its value exceeds so much beyond a normal artwork is
mm,
because of the number of years it has spread that very same value among the generations of people it has spread that into.
mm,
So that I would say that educative aspect of that learning factor of that feeling which he must have felt back then when he did that painting,
yeah.
and that being passed down generation to generation, that knowledge of that painting being existing, and that feeling. And back then oil painting and all these things were so much more crude, I would say, in nature. Now we have all different kinds of chemicals. We can produce colors at limitless capacity. But
Yeah.
back then, creating colors and all those things was such a difficult task. They used to
Yeah.
make
Because
natural colors from flowers and stuff like that, you know.
yeah, and
So
I suppose that painting communicated something universal about what it means to be human, right? And
exactly,
maybe that is not something that is cultural, right? That is something that all of us like. for instance, I was thinking about this. Sometimes we have associations with colors, but we also have
Yes.
associations with places and people. So when I see the color blue, for instance, certain
Mm.
emotions get initiated in me. I start thinking
Exactly.
about a memory of something blue. But then when I see an artwork where three or four colors or a
Mm.
line and a shape is combined to form a house or a
Mm.
person's body, I'm
Mm.
suddenly starting to make multiple associations with the same visual, right? So,
Exactly.
Amay, what do you think, according to you? Again, this is a
Mm.
very subjective answer. When
Yeah.
you create art,
Mm.
what kind of impact do you want it to have on someone that consumes your art? Or
I
consumes is
think
a very capitalistic word, right? But
no, 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 no,
I
no.
mean, like
But
someone
but
that
you're very right on that. I feel you're very right on that.
yeah,
We literally consume things around us.
yeah, rather
That's
than
what knowledge
engage with
is.
it in a
Exactly. Because engagement is what advertising agencies look out for.
I
But
don't know
well,
this. Yeah. This is
well,
exactly
just
why
to,
I think I'm not as. But again, no, nobody is not an artist. Everyone's an artist. But go ahead. I'm curious about your thoughts on what do you think the purpose of creating art is
well,
according to Amoy?
if anybody asks me, I always tell them that. I mean, I get a lot of people who come to me still. I mean, when I started this whole wall painting thing and this whole demeanor, and when I went from cafe to cafe, I met a lot of people who used to stop by the cafes and used to be like, "Man, you're great. You must have had such like awesome time doing your art. You must be famous or something." And for me, fame is again a very subjective thing, and but then people, right? They generally consider and just think. I mean, when they tell me that Amoy, you're such a great artist, dude. It's in your genes. You probably just bought it with you, and I kind of feel sad at that moment for some reason. And then I usually have just this one single reply that actually, man or girl, whoever it is, I it's not really that I was born with this, to be very honest,
Yeah.
because when I think back to the days where I used to do shitty artworks, they were really bad.
Yeah, but
And
several years, right? Am I like
for
from
several
seventh
years,
standard to
several
like
years.
4 years of art school? So I think it's about 8 to 10 years where you're just drawing, drawing, drawing. That many
Exactly.
people won't be able to see, right?
Yeah, I mean, back then I had no sense of line, no sense of what colors I should put, what colors mean. Like, for example, as you said, the blue color invoking few particular feelings or
Yeah,
memories inside a person. I learned all of these deeper, I say, understanding towards colors and stuff like that in an art college, which
mm,
was a very big, I would say,
take,
contribution of art college in my life, I would say,
got it.
which is where I think that even though formal education is not what something I would personally refer my child to
Mm,
in future per se, but at the same time, there is a learning in everything.
got it.
You cannot ever, unsee the fact that be it a formal education, not a formal education, be it learning from outside, from resources, be it learning from a mentor or from just the world around you.
Yeah.
But it all boils down to the fact that how much do you really want to learn?
Yeah, that's actually a very very important thought, Amma. And that's in the interviews we've done in the
Mm.
show up to now. I think what always stood out was everyone that we've spoken to, they have a particular thing they're interested in, but they're very open to accepting information or knowledge about it in any form that it comes to them. They're
Exactly.
looking at social media, looking at other people creating. They're
Yes.
also you know watching other people make stuff. They're creating and putting their own work out, but they're trying to you know find a way to learn more about it in any way possible. And I think like what you say is so important because with the internet, right, we're not
Yes.
limited to a formal system. Like 20
Exactly.
years ago, if someone wanted to do something, they had to go to a
It
school
was
to be exposed to an
impossible.
expert on it,
Yes.
right? But now
Yes.
there are experts that put all their life's work on a website, and you can just
Yes.
go and send them a message or an email and just
Mhm.
start working with them, right? Am I so?
Yes.
And I think
And
you're a good example of someone that's done that, Amoy, because I feel like
yeah.
you always reach out to other people, but I think I was always in awe of how easy it was for you to just start a conversation with a random person and just find a common thing and just keep going and understanding more about
Yes.
them. I think that's a skill, and that
Mhm.
is something that is not very easy to get good at, but I feel it gives you a lot of value in your own life, right?
It does. It
And
does.
but Amoy, do you think um emotions, the human experience, are some of like your larger, so because I'm looking at a lot of your artworks, right, Amoy, and I know there are certain themes that repeat
Yes.
themselves across a lot of your work, and I know it evolves for every person, but I know love, um you know uh is a big theme. Then
Yes.
the notion of death, the notion of love, the notion of family, and
Yes.
I don't know if all of this goes back to your days in manga, like friendship, and but what are some of the themes that you think a lot of your artworks revolve around these days? And it'll change in time, but what is it now?
I think it has always been only one theme, and it has always been only one theme, which is life.
Like, okay.
Because at the end of the day, I think that whenever I sit down to make an artwork and I think that, all right, now I gotta make something,
Mm,
I first feel what I'm feeling,
mm,
whatever state I am in. I mean, be it like I must have some fight and a day. I mean, we're normal human beings. Uh, Everybody goes through phases. Everybody feels emotions,
yeah.
depth sometimes. People go through depression. People go through anger. People all go through the loss of a person who was very dear to them, the death of that person, and all of these things, which are just rather my observations about life, is what I pen them down.
Mm,
Because I feel life is the greatest inspiration. I mean, be it sometimes my own life or a particular instance I have been through,
yeah.
or be it somebody's story I must have heard, or somebody else's particular view. But be it whatever it is always a theme about life. And in particular, I love the word death and irony for some reason. I have a very like I could write essays upon it, but then our show would get over. So the the very concept of death, irony, it's very close to my heart. So if you would see that generally all my artworks have a darker, I would say, atmosphere to them,
Mm,
where it has this particular feel of, I would say, intensity. I love
sure.
the word intensity
Sure. Yeah.
because I feel that that depth is what a person would connect to
Yep.
when they see my artwork. When they might see my artwork and they relate to some point of time in their life when they went through a similar situation,
Mm,
and then that would just be a clear connection with it. Because, as I said, right, me understanding that I had to fill the gap between going for people's acknowledgement to realizing that how would my artwork actually make them feel.
mm,
So I feel it is a very big responsibility also, which I eventually realized over the years, that it's a responsibility of an artist to understand how his artworks make other people feel.
nice.
And
Yep. and
because,
and yeah,
yes,
like I feel like artists help us process certain things that would be hard to process. And for instance, we often think about something like depression as a negative state of mind. I mean, but we normalize this as bad and good, right? And I
exactly,
think it's important as human beings to understand that emotions are signals of your body reacting to a particular environmental situation. There's nothing bad or good, right? And
exactly,
why is it bad to feel sad? Why do you always
yes,
have to feel happy, right? And
yeah,
why is that the societal norm, right? It's okay to
yeah,
feel sad. It's important to feel sad because all of us
yes,
go through phases, and and that's completely all right. And I think normalizing some of these emotions and conversations, and I feel that is one of the big benefits that art has given me, whether it's artworks, but also films, books, fiction,
Exactly.
photography. I just feel like there is an emotion I may have not experienced, but when I engage with a particular form of art, when I see a film, I'm like, wow, I can actually watch a film and see
Mm,
how a 40-year-old feels about a certain situation in their life when I
mm.
am 27, and
Yes.
experience the same emotion. It's almost like
Same
magic, right?
emotion. It
And
is. It is.
and I feel like as an artist, you make that process possible for other people, Amoy. And for
Yes.
that reason, I think what you're doing is so important, because um, you're also trying to communicate the message of your time, right, Amoy? Like
Yes.
you're so influenced by the social and political situation around you,
Yes.
and in a way it comes through unconsciously in your art as well, right, Amoy?
It does. It
And
does. Everything around us, as I said, life being the theme, right? That every day we are like, we were talking about consumption, right? Before, all the things that I consume, I would say, be it advertisement, media, or be it the society, or
mm,
be it at the end of the day, the office people I meet, or the friends that I meet, or anybody I meet, everybody these days, the topics that we choose to talk on are the films that we saw, probably, the
mm,
series that is going on, or probably some song that we heard. And I mean, those are the most general conversations you would hear. But in short, all of this is just a whole big chain of all the things we consume and let us make a form of ourself, like an identity. And
mm,
it's a, I think I would call it a very I have not decided a term for it, but just a kind of identity which is like the way we have our own egoistical identity in sense of psychology,
yeah.
and the way we have a digital identity in the terms of having accounts on Facebook and Instagram and everywhere else. The same way we have a mental plane identity, I would say, of a person whom we are according to the characteristics of the things that we watch, the shows that we watch, the kind of music that we listen to, the kind of
Wow.
just things that we consume. And this particular identity is what is the level I need to connect to other people at. If
Wow.
my artworks are that reflective of their particular identity, their particular aspect of that point of identity, think that then that would really let them be able to accept themselves. Because most of the time we, I mean, if you ask people these days, it's just that way, all right?
Mm.
I mean, whenever I must have gone to some new company, or like a new set of friends, a new set of people, and then you ask around, people are just so confused these days. They go like, "What kind of music you listen to?" And then they would just tell you that, "Oh, music. I listen to anything, dude. I mean, be it like jazz, be it rock, be it whatever, And generally,
Yeah,
it's
but
just
then
about
what's interesting in that conversation, right, Amoy,
mm,
sometimes the objective is not to share what music or films you watch. It's about being the coolest person in the room. So
exactly.
you want to share. I
You want to
listen
share how
to,
much knowledge I have of those things.
rather than why that the art actually affects you, right? And that's so
Yes.
that's I really like the point you mentioned, right?
Yes.
The kind of art we consume, whether it's a TV
Yes.
show or a film or
Mm.
music. We all listen to music, so technically
Yes.
all of us engage with art on a daily basis, right? But
Yes, we do.
the kind of art we consume tells you a lot about the kind of person we want to become, right?
Exactly, it
And that
does.
that is actually a very very, and that's something I just realized after you mentioned it, because sometimes
Mhm.
the TV shows or the films or the music I listen to is very different from maybe a very close friend. And
Yes,
actually, that is not a bad thing. That is actually
it's
good,
not at all a bad thing.
because
It's
you
mm,
just are looking at different themes that are relevant to your life at this point of time, right? And that's
yes,
why you're doing it. And the good part about it is that there is so much to choose from. Why do all of you want to consume the same sort of, medium or same
That
sort
is
of,
so true. That is so very true. At the end of the day, we have no particular limitations as to which things we do want to settle for.
yeah,
It's everybody's own choice.
true.
That said, apart from choices, you can every day have. I mean, people ask me the same question, and generally I go like, I would just end up probably boring you with a long paragraph. So rather, I would say I like all sorts of music, but which matches my taste or some particular incident or some particular moment, because different moments, different songs connect to different particular times. You must have had memories, as you said, that
Yeah.
different colors invoke feelings, music invokes feelings, photos invoke feelings. It's all a, I would say, so very interconnected that at the end of the day, it's about feelings. I mean,
Sure.
we're playing with human emotions. So
Yeah.
that is the responsibility, as I said, of an artist. That uh, when you're influential on other people of your perspective towards how you are conveying your emotions,
Mm,
uh, only then would another person connect to it
mm,
and realize that, okay, I feel those particular emotions. And as you said, Abhishek, remember, you were just talking about the fact that I like the fact that, Amoy, you have always kept talking to new people and you have connected them. And I feel, even as a conversationalist, I would say,
mm,
the understanding of the aspect that you are trying to portray some topic, and the reason you are asking the other person about the likes and dislikes of them is to get a basic view of what sort of person that would be, to have a mental imagery of him.
mm.
And then when you talk to him, then you connect on some emotional level.
True, yeah, because I think in that first conversation, you're just trying to
Mm.
understand what permutation and combination of emotions gets this
This
person going, right? And
exactly, to be
and
able to be open up.
yeah, and it's very interesting what questions we also decide to ask somebody we meet, right? Often
Yes.
the first question we ask somebody is, "What do you do?" Or
Yes.
we ask them, and then we go on to other things. And this
Yeah.
not it's not only professional conversations, but also personal and
Yeah.
general, like social conversations too. But I think this was really really interesting. I'd love to chat with you for ages about your perspective on so many of these things. But I think what we really got from today's conversation,
Yes.
is that you know I think as an artist, it's very important to find your voice, but also be open to different ways to find that voice, and constantly practice your craft, but also understand what is your vision of your craft, right? And
Yes.
to get to that point, go through formal, informal, combined formal, or whatever, and
Whatever
whatever
goes
you
away.
want, but also
Yes.
enjoy the
Enjoy the
process of
process.
consuming or engaging with art on a daily basis. So
Yes.
I think those are like a couple of very positive notes to end the
Yes.
show. But Amoy, thanks for your time today. I really
Yes,
really
definitely.
appreciate it. And for the viewers of the show, thank you again for checking in and for being so regular with watching all these wonderful profiles. And stay tuned for more such profiles in the coming weeks. But what I'd highly recommend for you to do now is follow Amoy's Instagram account and check out some of his other artworks, and even maybe send him a message about how some of
Definitely.
his artworks made you feel. So, thank you so much.